Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to ANF Plus Sports tonight. I'm Scott Pennyman with my guy, Fred
What's up?
Campagna.
What's up, Scott?
I think it's the first time we've done the show together, right?
Is it?
I think
Maybe we had
so.
one more. I don't know. I've gotten to have a few cameos here lately, a few more than a few, but always happy, to talk sports. And glad we get a chance to do this. Just want to note really quickly, my day job, as a lot of people probably know, is as one of the first alert meteorologists. We are watching a storm, Scott, that's south of our viewing area that could prompt a tornado warning for like Meriwether County. If that happens, I got to bounce because that's my main gig. But
Of course.
we'll keep an eye on it. It probably will not reach Meriwether County as a tornadic storm because the air is just not as unstable up in our part of Georgia as it is a little farther to the south. But anyway, let's talk about it.
Cool.
Let's talk about sports.
We'll have some fun here. We'll
Yeah.
talk some sports, and if things get kind of serious, we know you got to get out of here.
That's
it's all
right.
good. Hey, let's dip into these NBA playing games first, right? So the Bulls and the Raptors last night, man. Whoever caught any of that, man, that was kind of crazy because the Raptors were leading big time early. Honestly, for most of that game, the Raptors kind of had the handle on things, and it kind of fell apart in the fourth. What happened, man? That was kind of crazy.
They had trouble making their free throws.
Yeah.
Any idea why?
DeMar DeRozan's daughter, right? Wasn't she up there in the stands like?
Yeah, so she was on the baseline, behind one of the baskets, and if you missed it, check it out. She's probably 10 years old.
Yeah, young girl. Yeah.
And she was shrieking like only a 10-year-old girl can shriek. A lot of times when the Raptors were attempting free throws, and it worked. They were on the times that she shrieked. They were 18 of 36 from the line.
That's wild, isn't it?
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
And I think it took a minute for people to realize that it was DeMar DeRozan's daughter. So they don't give game balls typically in the NBA. It's not like football, but she gets one now, right? And she was asked. She wasn't asked. DeMar was asked after the game. So is she going to Miami? For Friday's game, and he said, "Nah, she's got to go to school."
Oh, school. Who needs school,
right?
man?
But if I'm that school, I'm no school Friday.
Right, exactly.
Right? Let her go.
Man.
Let her go.
They gotta get to the playoffs, man.
Yeah, exactly. You want some more basketball in Chicago or not this year? That game was weird. It's kind of summed up the Raptors a little bit. They seem to have trouble. They don't really have a go-to guy. They look a little bit awkward at times offensively. They're playing team, in my estimate. And so is Chicago for that matter. But at least Chicago has a couple of guys, DeRozan, Zach LaVine. You can kind of go to those guys a little more.
I think when you look at the Raptors, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, just a few years ago, they won an NBA championship with Kawhi Leonard as their star.
Yeah.
It looked like they had a really good team built around him as far as pieces and parts. Pascal Siakam looked like he was developing into being that real second option on the championship team. Fred VanVleet, just a really good player there. OG Anunoby, they have some really good pieces. But when Kawhi left, they just kind of had a bunch of pieces. They just kind of had a bunch of guys. And like you said, they kind of just went down to kind of being just a playing team. I think when you look at their future and where they're kind of head from here, I think they may start thinking about rebuilding a little bit, just because we all know how the NBA works. Either you're a championship contender. It's better to either be a championship contender or be a team at the bottom waiting in the lottery. The Raptors right now are a team that's kind of hanging in the middle. Yeah. They're not good enough to compete for a championship, and they're not bad enough to get a top 3 or 4 pick to be able to get a franchise-changing player. So I think when you look at the Raptors, I think that's one of those teams that might need to sort of slide into rebuild mode. They can really get some decent returns for some of the guys that they have. You can get a decent return for Pascal Siakam. You can get a decent return for guys like VanVleet. Well, I think VanVleet's a free agent this summer.
So Kawhi was obviously he's the guy. When he's healthy and playing well, especially at the time, he's top 5 guy in the NBA.
Yeah.
And then that makes complementary pieces like Siakam and VanVleet a lot better. But when he's your number 2 option, not going to work. Scotty Barnes, started out pretty well his rookie year. He was all right this year. So you don't want to be in NBA purgatory.
No.
Like you said. Yeah. I always think of the Pacers as a team that's like perennially like not awful, but not good enough to win anything. Right. So you kind of it does sometimes pay to be a little bit worse. Then there's the Nick Nurse situation. So he may be stepping away, right? Is that what I'm hearing, or he's
heard some whispers of that?
Yeah. So if if he's gone and if he actually steps away, he'll be scooped and just wants out of Toronto. So maybe what he's saying is falling on deaf ears. That does happen, happens all the time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, happened with the Celtics. Brad Stevens was just, smart enough to, or the brain trust in Boston was just smart enough to realize it at the time. They brought in Ime and a different voice, and now Joe Mazzulla, a completely different voice. But it's worked for the Celtics, right?
Yeah.
Nobody can argue that. We'll see if it works for the Hawks. Same sort of thing.
For sure.
After a while, that same voice, Nate McMillan, especially when Nick Nurse is probably not the easiest coach to play for. McMillan's not the easiest coach to play for. So those types of guys, you can end up, tuning them out.
Yeah, and I think just like you said, a guy like Pascal Siakam, he's not the best player on the championship team. He's not that kind of player.
Yeah.
Guys like Van Vliet,
There's
Anunoby,
3 or 4. The 3 or 4 option, great. Those are great guys when your main 2 guys are having an off night.
Exactly.
So that's why they are what they are.
Right.
It'll be interesting. I think that the Bulls are a tougher matchup for Miami. And this would be something, I think, if Miami, even though they were basically a 500 team this year, 42-40, I think.
Which is bizarre.
In a way, because that's a team we talked about it a little bit last time I was on, but Adebayo, come on. Jimmy Butler is Jimmy Butler. Everybody knows that at this point. He was not good in the first play-in game, but he'll probably be better tomorrow night.
I think Butler's kind of similar, though. I think Jimmy Butler is one of those guys I'm not so sure that he's the best player for a team that can win it all.
Well, they came really close. I mean, they came a Jimmy Butler 3-pointer away from beating the Celtics last year and then getting there. True. So, he bricked the 3 when they were down 2. And that would have been it, pretty much. Kyle Lowry, he's a winner, but he's getting up there now.
Right.
He's an older guy. He was great against the Hawks. He was the only guy who showed up.
Right.
So I feel like that's kind of a coin flip now. That Bulls Heat matchup. It's probably not going to be a real high scoring game with those 2 teams, but DeRozan, he's got a great half court game. He's the kind of guy who you can just rely on a little bit to go to work and get something done. And Butler's almost the same way. So unless Miami comes out and plays a lot better, I expect that to be a pretty tight game. And that has been the case, Scott, in most of these playing games. Pretty good games.
Yeah, these are all good games. And I think when you look at the Bulls team, when you look at the Bulls and the Heat, it's kind of one of those crazy matchups. I think when you look at the Heat, it's kind of wild, right? Like we said, they were a team that was kind of continuing to come out the East last few years.
Yeah.
And now they're fighting to even make the playoffs. So that's kind of wild when you look at what they have. And just watching them the other night against the Hawks, they kind of look like they got old overnight, man. They just kind of like their pieces and parts with Jimmy Butler. He doesn't look as I'm not going to say dominant, but he doesn't look like that alpha that he used to. Kyle Lowry, who played really well the other night.
2 guys that are Lowry's, he's on like the 15th, 16th hole, something like that.
Yeah.
And Butler's probably made the turn, and he's on the back 9 too in terms of his career. So those guys do get older, and Adebayo and Tyler Herro, neither one of them took that next step this year. In fact, I think Adebayo might have even taken a little step back based on the way that he played in a very important game the other night. So you got to rely on those guys to do something. I do think Miami is one of those teams that really does not have a solid starting 5. So then the other guy is Strus, right? Or Herro.
Yeah, they have Max Strus off the bench and guys like that.
But Strus starts, I think, for them, doesn't he? But either
Oladipo,
way,
I think,
right? That's not going to get it done come playoff time. No. Too much of a weakness. He's all right, but he's not going to be.
He's a guy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Now, the late game last night, I thought was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
I don't get to see the entirety of any of these games.
Thunder Pelicans.
I'm a little busy on the news at that time, but the Thunder, Pelicans.
Thunder Pelicans.
Look out for the Thunder. I was texting on one of my NBA group chats there, and I was like, that's a team that's going to be a problem in the West, or should be for years to come.
Yeah,
Shea is awesome. He's going to be first team All NBA.
You think this season he will be?
There are some links out there to like a Google Doc that somebody has put together, a document that's tracking the votes, and he has a pretty healthy, not lead, but I think he's second among the guards for all NBA first team at this point. And they're about half the votes have been tallied. So, well, look at it. Who else is going to be up there?
I can see it, though. I mean, just look at the season that he's had. I mean, he's kind of carried that team to where they're at now. Him and Josh Giddey's a really good second-year player, too. I mean, they have a really – I think their future is bright for them. If Chet Holmgren ends up being a really, down the road, I mean –
there's Chet, so they have a good coach. Lou Dort is a very really solid – like, that's a guy. If he's your fifth guy as a starter, then you're in great shape, right? That's not bad. And if he's on this team, he's more of a 3 or 4. But Chet, we'll see. I think everybody's waiting to see what that is like in the NBA. Right. And then their picks. Have you seen the draft picks they have?
Yeah, they have like 6,000 over the next 3 years, right?
But more than that. It's like 4 or 5 years. Maybe not more than 6,000, but roughly 6,000 first-round picks in the next 4 or 5 years. It's crazy. So they have tons of draft capital, kind of like the Celtics were, years back. And look what the Celtics were able to do. If you do hit on most of those picks, which at the time people were like, oh, Marcus Smart, oh, Jaylen Brown, like, what are you doing? These guys are not top 8, top 5 type of picks. Well, Jaylen Brown's another guy who's going to be all NBA. He'll be second team, but and New Orleans.
Man, let me tell you, man. With Zion Williamson, that's just so frustrating when you look at it and how good they were early in the season when Zion was playing, and then just kind of when you look at now. I mean, is he hurt? Is he not? I mean, he's going back saying that he's fine physically, but it seems like there's something there mentally just keeping him from getting back on the court. It's looking like Zion Williamson is the poster child for why the National Football League doesn't want fully guaranteed contracts. Yeah. I mean, seriously. Because
he or Ben Simmons,
him and Ben Simmons, because when you got a guy getting already a guaranteed $170 million and he comes to you and he says mentally right now he doesn't feel right, so he doesn't feel like that he can play and help your team, and he's supposed to be the player that you're building your entire franchise around. I mean, come on. I mean, you just can't have that. So now when I look at guys like Lamar Jackson having trouble getting his money in the NFL because the NFL owners don't want guaranteed contracts, you look at a guy like Zion Williamson and you go, oh, that's the reason the NFL doesn't want guaranteed contracts, because they don't want guys acting like Zion Williamson.
Yeah. Well, I think in the NBA, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, but if the owners had their way, they wouldn't be guaranteed there either. But they are, like MLB and, some other.
That's a bad situation right now.
So New Orleans is in a tough spot. And then, so there was somebody, it was one of the guys, it might have been Skip Bayless, who tweeted out that the brass was not happy with Zion in New Orleans, and one of the players on the team immediately tweeted back and said, that's not true, he's our guy, blah, blah, blah. But then CJ McCollum, post-game, came out and said everything except for we needed Zion to be playing. Which was basically like, guys got to recover right, guys got to sleep right, guys got to eat right. Basically calling out Zion without, mentioning him by name. And that's a respected vet, too. I think McCollum, actually, I was talking to somebody else about this, deserves better than being on the Pelicans. Like, he deserves to be, with one of the top 2 or 3 teams in either conference, because he'd be that type of piece that could get them over the top.
But I think that, when you look at their team, when you look at their roster and what they were earlier in the season, I think when Zion plays and he's out there playing like we know he can play, they might be a top 3 team in the Western Conference. I mean, they were that good to me.
No, they are, but he's not.
Right, and that's the problem. It's just I don't know how motivated he is to get back either.
Saying I love the Bucks when Giannis plays. I mean, those Warriors are great when Steph Curry plays.
Right.
But he's not. Amazingly, we looked it up. He's 22.
Yeah.
He's still only 22 years old.
He is.
So he's still very, very young. There's still time to fix this, to get it right. But I just think it's a terrible look to be doing windmill dunks pregame of the play-in game and then not playing.
And that's what sort of gives a little bit of, credence to the argument, the way they call it, credence to the argument that he didn't want to be there in the first place, right? So, around draft time, it was talked about how he wanted to be in New York, how he wanted the Knicks to draft him. They didn't get the number 1 overall pick. Pelicans got it. And he looks like a player who doesn't want to be in New Orleans. He doesn't ever appear to be motivated physically to be able to get in tip-top shape, the shape he needs to be productive long-term, to stay off the injury report. He doesn't appear to be in any hurry to get back and join his team. So now I'm just starting to kind of ask myself, does he really even want to be there in the first place?
Well, somebody hasn't surrounded Williamson with the right people.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he needs better advice, you know,
Right.
and hopefully he takes to heart what some of his teammates or what McCollum was saying, you know, because that's what it's going to take. And why wouldn't you want to be in New Orleans? That crowd last night was
awesome.
into it. I actually felt bad for the crowd because, you know, OKC comes back, they get the lead, looks like they're going to win, but then you still have two seconds left, you're inbounding the ball, and you know you have that prayer. You know you have that shot. Maybe it's from 35 or half court, but you still got that shot. And they just throw it out of bounds, which was such a tough way to see your season end. You know, he just was trying to hit, I think it might have been Ingram, I'm not even sure who it was, coming up the court, and he just let him too far and threw the inbounds pass out of bounds. So, you know, New Orleans, I think if they were what they should have been this year or could have been this year, I mean, you are what you are, I guess, but that place would have been electric. They'd probably be a 3 or 4 seed, like you said, and it would have been an amazing first round, you know, matchup for them. Instead, you know, they're on the golf course, and it's, you know, it's New Orleans, and then a little bit farther along the Gulf Coast, you know, it's Houston, like teams that are a little childish. I mean, these are really young guys that are brought in, and you know, Houston's another team. You know, they got talent, but man, I mean, they just don't bring it every night. They don't play like that. So.
Well, I tell you what, we got the 2 playing games tomorrow night, so you know the NBA will continue with those. Let's dig into the NFL draft. Fred, 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks away.
Oh, man, it just gets later and later though every year, it seems, right? They make us wait for it.
I know.
The amount of draft hype, and then it's stretched out over so many days. I know. Let's just get it going. What are you hearing?
Well, look, I'm really intrigued myself just by, you know, obviously being here in Atlanta where the Falcons stand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to be like the momentum kind of now is going back to a Bryce Young going number 1. I guess now it's been some talk that Houston at number 2. I mean, maybe they would go for C.J. Stroud. Maybe they wouldn't. I mean, I guess that's kind of one of those things that's kind of been up in the air. I fully expect there to be the first 3 picks to be quarterbacks, maybe even the first 4 picks.
Okay,
maybe
so
the first 4.
So you're saying somebody trades with Cardinals then?
I think it makes perfectly good sense. For
And
the
who's the
to move
4th
down.
quarterback if there's 4?
So obviously you have Bryce Young at the top. You have C.J. Stroud. I think Richardson is going to ease his way up, and I think from Kentucky,
Levis.
I think Will Levis is going to work his way up.
I don't see Levis going that high. I mean, maybe, but
We all know what happens, man, this time of year.
Yeah, unless it's a sure thing. So for that to happen, right? Unless the Colts like Levis, that would mean someone would have to trade up to take Richardson, which I've seen some wild mock drafts out there.
Yeah,
and I do kind of like that. Like I'm not a guy who creates mock drafts, but if I did, you know what? Let's just go with the craziest one, because who likes the predictable mock draft, right? So I've seen some that have, you know, the Patriots trading up with the Cardinals to take Richardson, which makes no sense whatsoever, because you know, Richardson is somewhat of a project, right? I think at quarterback, he's got a lot of talent, but he's not going to be ready right off the bat. Anyway, I agree with you on Bryce Young. I think he scored incredibly well on that test, you know, which is all about quick decision making.
Absolutely.
So he scored great on that. His size wasn't that much of a concern, or his height will always be a concern.
A little bit,
but he bulked up just a little bit. Was over 200 pounds. That's who I would take. To me, C.J. Stroud, he was great against the Dogs in the semifinal, but I think that Bryce Young's body of work is better than his.
Look, I'm an Ohio State Buckeyes fan, and I'll be the first person to tell you, stay away from Ohio State quarterbacks. I'm telling you. I mean, it never seems to work out in the NFL. I mean, just improving through NFL history. When you look at Ohio State quarterbacks, especially ones taken very high in the draft, just stay away from them because we're first-round picks. It never seems to work out, man. I don't know whether it's their system and how they play or the talent around them or what's going on there in Columbus. They do not breed NFL signal callers. It just doesn't happen. So that would be my fear.
So you're saying you would not go with Stroud?
I wouldn't, man.
Even if you had 2, 3, 4, you would address a different position, or would you get a different guy? Because to me, I don't know if Richardson or Levis is. I know Richardson can throw it a mile. I know he's like physically superior, but his numbers weren't that great at Florida. So
look, somebody's going to get up there and get Stroud, and somebody's going to get up there and get Richardson, just because, like we talked about before, when in the NFL, when you need a quarter, there's two different types of teams. There's teams that have quarterbacks and teams that don't have quarterbacks. The teams that have quarterbacks, they contend. The ones that don't have quarterbacks don't contend. So we know somebody's going to move up and go get one of these guys, and we'll just kind of see how it rolls.
All right. So what about the Falcons?
I like the Falcons to me, the most interesting thing here is to see how Jalen Carter falls. And I want to see what the Falcons would do if Jalen Carter falls to them at 8. I want to see if they'll make that move. I mean, if he falls to them at 8, as bad as the Falcons are with their defensive line, I think that's the perfect scenario for them, and they should, at this point, since I know they're not going to go for a quarterback, I think that the best thing for them would be Jalen Carter to fall to them at number 8 and just swoop them on up.
I mean, it could happen if you do end up with 4 quarterbacks going.
Yeah.
Then you end up with Will Anderson. Then you end up with one or both of the cornerbacks, that are, was it Witherspoon and Gonzalez, the two, because if Witherspoon goes, right, that's his name, I think that's his name, then somebody might get a little anxious. Right. Detroit just traded one of their corners, Jeff Okudah, to the Falcons. Yeah. So you got to look at Detroit and figure that they're going to address the cornerback situation. So then Jalen Carter, I would think, becomes kind of a no-brainer for the Falcons. I just don't think he'll be there by then, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll be there, but I think that's one of the more interesting scenarios is if he falls that far. I mean, obviously, he's had some issues off the field.
Yeah.
We just don't know how far that's going to drop him. But I think if he drops down to the Falcons at 8, seems like it'll be a no-brainer, right? I mean, that seems to be a golden opportunity to get a dominant defensive lineman for a team that desperately needs a dominant defensive lineman. So I think that's good there. So let's move on to our next topic.
Let's go.
Daniel Snyder finally got the sell off. Apparently, at least that.
Yeah, it says close to Commander's sale. I thought it was done. I thought it was
it's
signed, sealed, delivered. It's the group with I don't know who the billionaire is, but Magic Johnson's in the group.
I guess until they write the check, it ain't done, right? I guess until they give him the money.
Right. That's true too.
Was it $6.6 billion?
But for Commanders fans, it can't come soon enough.
For sure. That's been one of the most tumultuous. I don't even know how to describe his time as the owner of Washington, the Redskins, the Washington football team / Commanders.
It's falling apart.
It's just falling apart.
Yeah, it's totally falling apart. When he bought the team, did some interesting stuff in terms of trying to put a winner on. No, he really did. Like he brought in some guys and paid some guys, and because he bought it way back. But last few years have been an unmitigated disaster there. So and they have a pretty decent coach in Ron Rivera. They have pretty decent talent too on that team. Chase Young, and then their receiving core is pretty good. Was that?
They don't have a quarterback.
True.
At least not one
and
that
haven't.
you feel good about. And they haven't. I mean,
no, they really haven't.
Who was Washington's last? I mean, they thought RG3 was one for one season.
I mean, obviously they won it. They won it with Doug Williams,
right? And then Mark Rippon.
Mark Rippon was a very good quarterback too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but that's like, they're RG3. Unfortunately, that didn't. Mostly due to injury. He didn't have the career that most people expected him to have.
Right.
But since then you're going Heineke. The Carson Wentz thing was an absolute disaster. So it's definitely looking up for the Commanders. It's just $6.6 billion. I mean, that's the going price. That's the sticker price now, and it's crazy. I mean, that isn't a huge market, big market, but still, there are probably smaller market NFL teams that are just like, okay, your owners, I should say, that are like, we're 4.5, 5 billion easy.
That's a lot of money, man. That's
It
a lot
is.
of money.
But it's just a trend, Scott. You see it across English Premier League. You see it across hockey teams going for almost $1 billion.
Woo.
So live sports.
Hey, man.
It's one of those things, and it in a time when you don't need to see much live to enjoy it, sports is one of those things that you do. You can stream and binge that Netflix series whenever you want.
Yeah, that's true.
But sports, you got to be there live.
Look, I just hope for the folks in Washington that
they
get a good owner in place, because, like I say, it's been so tumultuous. It's been so bad since he's been the owner there. And look, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, so I know what it's like to have bad ownership that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, you know better than anybody.
Doesn't have a quarterback.
You know better than anybody except Lions fans.
Right, exactly. So they've been a really poor on the field franchise for a long time. Yeah. So maybe they can get it right, but we all know it starts at the top. So, hopefully for them, they'll get the right owner in place and they'll get that thing going in the right direction. So finally, what's on your mind tonight, Fred?
That's a good question. I guess I'll say it. Brett, our producer, would be mad if I didn't. The Rays. Yeah, they just swept away the Red Sox. Wow, 13-0 now.
That's crazy.
I believe.
It's a crazy start.
It's a best start.
13-0.
Best start in, I think, over 100 years. So, the Rays. Can you imagine World Series games? I guess it's happened, but the Trop. I mean, it's unbelievable what they do, really, because they don't pay anybody.
That's true.
But they still manage to put a really good team on the field all the time. Their pitching is nasty, and
it is.
So I guess that's what's on my mind.
I just kind of this early in the baseball season, it's really kind of hard for me to get excited about a team, even though 13-0, that's amazing, right? I mean, it's crazy. Like we say, it hasn't been done before. But I remember I worked with a sportscaster. Yeah. In the first job I had, he says the best thing about winning baseball games in April is that it beats the alternative. That's it. I mean, that's really all you can take from winning baseball games.
They count the same as the ones in October.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? That's what was on my mind tonight. What was on my mind was wondering what was on your mind.
All right. Well, then we covered it.
Hey, look.
So you say goodbye.
Hey, look. That's it for ANF Plus Sports tonight. I'm Scott Pennyman. Thank you, Fred. Thanks for helping out tonight, man.
All right. Take it easy. Have a good one.
Have a good Thursday.
See ya.